country's best First Lady here with us as well, my wife Casey. I have a few of these. It's we're open, 46th governor. So I have some of these hats. Does anyone want any of the hats? We'll have some more stuff in weeks ahead. It's wonderful to be here. People sometimes ask me, Governor, what have you learned since being governor? You know, my wife and I, we have a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old at home. And I think when people ask me that, they think that, oh, I'm going to say, oh, here's what happens with a hurricane, or here's what this and that. And obviously there are lessons in everything, but when I think about what we've learned having our 3 little runs in the governor's mansion is, yes, you can get finger paint out of the wallpaper in the state dining room. You can get slime off the carpet in the living room. So we're learning and we're figuring out how to do it, but it's wonderful to have a great family, although people will say you're always going around the state, you need to go home, get some rest or whatever. Just understand, when we're home, there is no rest, okay? We're working hard to keep up with all these folks, but we're proud of being here. We're proud that we are the best state in the country for homeschooling. We're also proud that we've led the way over the last year in being open and letting people, making sure they had a right to work and to earn a living, and that businesses had a right to operate and to stay alive and to succeed, and that kids had a right to go to school, whatever they wanted. Homeschool, in school, you have to do it. And so we've been able to lead the way on all of that, and people, you see, like everyone wants to come to Florida now, and look, I'm fine. We got a great people. I don't need people, or either way. I mean, whatever. It's a free country, but I think you see that they've been under these policies in these other states, and they view Florida as the refuge, a place for freedom. And it's not just in our country. I'll get letters and things sent to my office from people in other countries. I'll get people in Ireland who are chafing under a lockdown saying we're looking to Florida as our inspiration, and we're looking to you as the leader of the free world. And so we're proud of being able to stand up. It's interesting. You have these other governors in these other parts of the country. They will lock down their states. The mayors will lock down their cities. And yet I see a lot of these people end up coming to Florida. After they lock their people down, they then come and escape to Florida. And it's multiple governors have done this, multiple big city lockdown mayors have done this. And meanwhile, a lot of times they criticize Florida for being open. How hypocritical, can you be? But I can tell you this. They've destroyed the lives of millions of people throughout this country with their draconian policies. And we're only now beginning to see all this, but I think months and years into the future, people are going to continue to look back and say that those types of policies did untold damage to people in the United States. And at the end of the day in Florida, we chose freedom over Fauciism. We're proud of what we're doing in education. I mean, as many of you know, it's funny, I'll see these like little clips, and it's like some states like, oh, the legislature in this state is trying to allow homeschooled kids to have access to high school athletics or all this stuff. I'm like, man, we're so far ahead of all of that with what we've done in Florida, and we'll continue to stay ahead of the curve. Don't worry about that. But we really believe in parental choice. We believe that parents, should have the right to make these key education decisions for their children as they see fit. And some of that may be that you go to your local school. Maybe, particularly our low-income families, maybe they have an ability using some of our scholarships to go to a private school. Obviously, we have a lot of public charter schools, but we absolutely empower parents to be able to homeschool their kids, but then also make sure those kids have access to everything else, just like you would if you had sent them to a public school. And so athletics, activities, all the stuff we're going to be doing as we do more and more things with apprenticeships and all that, every homeschool student should have access to everything that's being offered in any of these school districts. And so we're proud of being able to do it. But you look around and we're fighting a lot of battles when it comes to education. I think it's really, really important that every kid in Florida gets a good education in American civics and in our Constitution. People will go out and hopefully they're well educated. They can get involved in whatever they want to. Some people will go into a science, or some people will go into business, or what have you. Follow your dreams. Not every subject you study in school may necessarily be relevant, throughout the rest of your life. I think many are, but many won't. But I can tell you, no matter what choice you make in terms of the occupation and whatever you endeavor to do, the one common thing that everyone's going to have is you are going to be required to be a citizen, an active citizen of this country. And so understanding what it means to be an American is something that everyone needs to carry with them. Whether you're going to be a doctor, business, engineer, school teacher, it doesn't matter. We all need that common foundation. And so we've worked hard since I've become governor to get the Constitution and civics back in the classroom. Quite frankly, a lot of the homeschool curriculum provides a really good roadmap because it's not infected with a lot of the activism and the ideology. So we're working towards, in COVID, kind of because of the school year, this year was a little bit different, but our view is, and we're working that, in order to graduate from high school, you really should be able to pass a citizenship type exam, just like people who are naturalized immigrants have to pass, to show that you understand. And it's, there's a lot of stuff to know, I guess, but honestly, there's just certain fundamentals that if we just put our minds to it, everyone would be able to do it. For example, understanding the unique founding of the United States of America. What did the founding fathers endeavor to do? What made America different and unique? And there's a number of things, but at a core, the founding fathers looked and they had surveyed all the different governments throughout the world. And most of those governments were premised on the idea that your liberty came from the government. Maybe the king was endowed with power by God, but ultimately, whatever freedoms you have was a courtesy of the state. And so there were some people that enjoyed a lot of freedom. There were some people that enjoyed very little freedom, but that was a decision that was being made by government. The founding fathers said, no, that's wrong. They said, we as individuals are endowed by God with inalienable rights. So life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness are directly endowed by the Creator. And they wrote that in the Declaration of Independence. And then when it came time to create the Constitution, they understood that liberty being endowed directly to the people is not meaning that the freedom comes from government. In fact, we give government the authority to be able to do what we deem it should do, but that authority ultimately rests with us. And so you have a constitution that was crafted by we the people. It was it delineated certain discrete powers. Those were limited powers, and they were definite powers. It was not an indefinite grant of authority, and that was what was happening. But the government itself had no inherent power other than what the people had done. And so that turned most of human history on its head. But if you don't understand that, and so the Bill of Rights, when they did the Bill of Rights, they weren't saying that the Bill of Rights, that the First Amendment is giving you the right to free speech or giving you the right to freedom of religion. No, no, no. You already possess the freedom to worship and the freedom to speak because those rights came directly from God. What the First Amendment does is it protects the rights that you already have against potential government intrusion. But that's a fundamental insight that I think everybody should understand who studies the history of our country and the founding of our country. And we also need to teach about, some of the people who were great leaders and really made the difference, whether that's George Washington, whether that's other founding fathers like Hamilton and Jefferson and Madison. Well, there's people throughout history like Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, other people that came in the 20th century fighting these big battles against Nazism, against communism. Very, very important that people understand this. You can't do that properly if you allow the curriculum to be hijacked by ideology. You cannot do this. Cannot do this if you're not speaking the truth and speaking the facts. And so in Florida, we've made clear there is no room for critical race theory in the state of Florida. We should not be spending a single dime of taxpayer money teaching kids to hate their country, to hate each other, and to hate themselves. It's a little, I don't know whether it's even something that matters, the number of people, if you think you want more or less people, but the better job we do in the state of Florida, you will have parents that have more confidence sticking with their current schools. The more this gets out of hand, I can tell you, you're going to have more homeschool families because they're not going to be, someone told my wife and I one time, your kids are basically an open book. And so the people that are in front of them that are teaching them, they're writing, pages of these books. And, you want to have people that you have confidence in. And if you see the curriculum being hijacked, if you see it being subservient, the facts being subservient to activism and ideology, that's not something I think a lot of parents are going to want to put up with. And so, but this is going to continue to be a perennial fight because I think the education system is something that some of the forces have latched onto, and they want to use it as a way to further an agenda. And so we're going to have a lot of fight on our hands with critical race. I mean, it's one thing for us to say you can't do it. It's one thing for us. But I mean, man, sometimes it's going to be like playing whack-a-mole all across the state because you have people that just want to do what they want. But I think it's important, and I think but this is a larger issue of things that are going on in our country right now. If you look around and you see what some of this movement is doing, not just critical race, but to be basically denigrating our country time and time again. You look at corporate media institutions and what they do. I mean, basically, they lie for profit is their business model. They do not tell the truth. They try to smear people that they disagree with. And they pursue partisan narratives rather than reporting the facts. And indeed, they will actively suppress the truth if it conflicts with their narratives. And they are aided in this by the forces in big tech. You have big tech, which is now serving as a way to censor certain views that they disagree with. And how ridiculous has this made them look just in the last year? Last year, if you had said that the coronavirus leaked from the lab in Wuhan, they would censor you. They would deplatform you for even suggesting that that is something that should be investigated. Well, now, even Fauci acknowledges that this is something that very well may have been the case. And so you look at also last year when we were fighting the coronavirus lockdowns, people that were publishing criticisms of COVID lockdowns would have their articles taken down by these big tech platforms. They went all in on the lockdowns. They wanted no dissent from their narrative. But now we look a year later and you see the states that were lockdown states like Michigan, like New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, compared to Florida. Even though we have an older population, every one of those states has higher per capita COVID mortality than the state of Florida. The lockdowns failed. They did not work. They didn't work, but just think, had big tech not tried to smother debate a year ago, maybe we would have had a better debate about whether this was the right thing to do. And maybe some of those states wouldn't have gone down the roads that they did. And that would have meant the lives and livelihoods of untold numbers of people would have been better protected. And so this is really, really significant. But it's not just that. You also have big business that is deciding to basically go, quote, woke and adopting some of these ridiculous political positions. And, you know, my view on it is, look, your business, look, if you want to get involved on stuff and opine on things, I mean, honestly, you do have the right, but just understand, if you're parroting false narratives about Florida, if you're getting into our business, if you don't like voter ID or you don't like things that a vast majority of Floridians support, and you're going to try to smear things that we're doing, I'm fighting back against you. So I think you're in a situation where you have a lot of the elites in our society, the big media, big tech, big business. Obviously, academia has always been, had the issues. You have that, and they really are dedicated to pursuing certain ideologies and certain narratives. Really, I think, against the best interests of the vast majority of the American people. So if you reject those narratives, if you reject the conventional wisdom, I mean, I always tell people, you know, if you want to know, when I was in Congress for 6 years, I say, look, if there was ever difficult issues, foreign affairs, whatever, survey the conventional wisdom inside the Beltway in D.C., and then just do the opposite, and you will be right 9 times out of 10. So you've got a lot of, I think, a desire to pursue some of this. I think it's against the interests and against the values of the vast majority of the people. But I think that this movement, you know, does command a lot of very powerful lovers in our society. And so what that means is, if you want to stand up and fight back against that, you got to have some backbone. You got to have some courage. And you got to be willing to hold your ground and hold the line against people who are going to come after you. You know, we saw that in Florida when we were doing with the state, having the schools open and the businesses open. I mean, you would have thought, if you listened to these narratives, you know, that we were doing the wrong thing and they constantly, but you know what? I didn't get elected to kowtow to the corporate media. I got elected to serve the people of Florida. So we made sure that we were standing up for folks that didn't have a voice in this process. New York corporate media did not care whether our kids were getting educated. Hell, they wanted the schools closed the whole year. New York corporate media did not care whether you had the ability to earn a living or whether you had the ability to maintain a business. Heck, they wanted the businesses closed for most of the year. And so you don't kowtow to those folks, you make sure that you're standing up for your folks. And so that's what we've done. But I can tell you, when you stand up and when you cut against the grain and when you challenge their narratives, you will see blowback. And it's not just a guy like me who's, is the governor. It's people in everyday communities who are standing up and standing on principle. I mean, you see some of these parents, these very brave parents going in, telling these school boards to stop putting these masks on these kids, I mean, it's ridiculous. And that is 100% consistent with science. It's consistent with parental rights. I mean, you as a parent should have the right to decide how, you send your kid to school. But it's the type of thing that it really much conflicts with the spirit of the age and kind of what the narrative is and all this. Although even that is starting to peel off a little bit, because they were getting themselves caught into knots because they were saying to everybody, we vaccinate. They're like, if you vaccinate, you still got to wear multiple masks. You can't ever go inside. I mean, it's like, what kind of messaging is that? So I think they've understood that was very problematic. But that takes courage when people are standing up against some of the prevailing narrative, and particularly standing up to the corrupt media. And so what I would tell you is when we, and I probably have a lot of issues that we're going to have to tackle over the next many years, just stand strong. Stand strong for what you believe in. Show some backbone in what you're doing. Only support people for office who have a spine and are going to be willing to stand on principle. It's always easy. It's always easy to tell people what they want to hear when it's election time. But the question is, when the lights get hot, when the pressure builds, when you have to fight some of these battles, who's going to stand up and be counted, and who is going to go retreat, never to be heard from again? And so if you show courage, if you show strength, I can tell you there's people in your communities, there's people throughout this state who will be with you 100% of the way. And so for me, I will be standing the ground for the state of Florida. I will make sure to hold the line. And I can tell you this, I have only begun to fight for this state. God bless.